GetSetUp is a peer-to-peer learning or social platform for anyone in their 50s. I would say mostly people 55, either rediscovering themselves, making a career pivot, retired, or just want to live their best lives.
Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast, brought to you by Career Pivot. This podcast is where those of us in the second half of life come together to discuss how to repurpose our careers for the 21st century. Come listen to career experts give you proven strategies. Listen to people like you tell their stories on how they repurpose their careers. And finally, get your questions answered. Your host, Mark Miller, has made 6 career pivots over the last 30 years. He understands this is not about jumping out of the frying pan into a fire, but rather to create a plan where you make clear, actionable steps or pivots to a better future career. Are you ready to repurpose your career?
Welcome to episode 242 of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. My name is Mark Miller, and I'll be your host every Monday for a discussion on what it's like to repurpose your career. This week, I am interviewing Neil Dsouza, who's the CEO of GetSetUp. GetSetUp is the largest and fastest growing online community of older adults who want to learn, connect, and stay active. With over 3 million members in 160 countries, the platform offers live classes taught by peers who are experts in their field, social hours hosted by community members, and special events with speakers who directly address areas of interest to older adults. Classes are taught in English, Spanish, Hindi, and Mandarin. GetSetUp has offices in the US, Australia, India, and more sites coming soon. The Career Pivot community has supplied many guides to GetSetUp, and their experiences on teaching on the platform have been pretty amazingly positive. So I wanted Neil on the podcast to talk about GetSetUp. However, before we get to the episode, let's have a word from our sponsor, Career Pivot. The Career Pivot membership community continues to help the members who are participating in this project grow and thrive. This is a community where everyone is there to help everyone else out, figure out what they want to do in the second half of life, and then make it happen. Let's hear what David had to say about being part of the community.
What I have gotten out of the Career Pivot community is really 2 phases. The first phase, I was employed, but then I lost my job for almost 7 months. So the Career Pivot community helped me, frankly, get my head on straight, to have the right attitude. It helped me go through a methodical reassessment and a process to find employment, which I did. So that was very helpful, and that's why I continue to stay. The second phase is, since that time, I have since retired. So it's a slightly different phase, but the Career Pivot community still provides ideas, engagement, frankly, camaraderie, particularly now since we're going through the pandemic process. So it's great to have that feedback and camaraderie. For me also, the bottom line is you're not alone out there. You have other people that give you ideas and perspectives and, frankly, support. So that's why I really enjoy and like the Career Pivot community.
I'm recruiting new members for the next group. If you are interested in learning more about the endeavor, please go to careerpivot.com/community. Now, on to my discussion with Neil Dsouza. Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast. I have the real joy of having Neil Dsouza, who is the CEO of GetSetUp, on the podcast. Neil, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
I wanted Neil on because I just published a blog post from Liz Miller, who works for GetSetUp. I've had Judy Stelling on the podcast before from GetSetUp, and I have a whole bunch of people from my online community who are teaching for GetSetUp. So, Neil, what is GetSetUp?
GetSetUp is a peer-to-peer learning or social platform for anyone in their 50s. I would say mostly people 55, either rediscovering themselves, making a career pivot, retired, or just want to live their best life. So it's an online platform where people come to teach, to share their knowledge, to learn from each other. And it is, expanded way beyond just learning. People now do exercises, they learn technology, they're teaching each other different cooking techniques. They are, I don't know, last they checked, they were learning dance. So, in a nutshell, I hope one day it will be a better version of Facebook with meaningful activities done by people.
How did you get started? What was the origin behind the idea behind GetSetUp?
It's quite relevant to what you're doing, right, with career pivot. So my background was in education. The last 10 years I left tech, I went into education, and then as I was sort of transitioning between my last company and what to do next, I just spent a lot of time with my friends who I had not reconnected with. And a lot of my friends are older. They're 20 years older than me. They are rock stars. I mean, I love hanging out with them. They are either cyclists or entrepreneurs. And then my dad was also retiring. And so I saw people around me who were hitting that juncture in their life, whether it's 55, 60. And there was a sense of feeling invisible, right? I heard that sentiment that, hey, we have all these skills, but we feel invisible. And that kind of got me thinking that, why is there a delta between how I perceive them, how I perceive the skills they have, and how they are starting to look at themselves, including society at large. And so that really got me to think hard about why not leverage this asset, like people in this age group, to solve a real world problem, right? Where they don't have to feel like they're aging and they need to be taken care of. Like we can use their skills and wisdom to create meaningful opportunities. And originally, it was with the intent of creating jobs, like reskilling and upskilling people in their 60s, so that we could create more jobs and employment opportunities. And that really was the reason, right? Was to believing that there's a massive untapped potential, and how do I create an opportunity to leverage that skill to solve a problem. So that's how it started. We got retired teachers, just because of my background in education. We got retired teachers to come on, and I used to skill, and Judy actually was one of my first applicants. We used to upskill them on software. So think about learning how to be a host on Airbnb, to use Airbnb, or to set up your first website, or to set up a Shopify store. All of these products and services are fairly complicated to learn. And these companies think about their users being very young. And so they will watch YouTube and figure it out. And I just knew that was not how people learned. So, when I got started, this is in February last year, it was about taking teachers, putting them through an online academy, making them learn some of these software tools, and then getting them to teach others who wanted to become a host on Airbnb or wanted to set up a store. And so that's really because, it was solving a real problem for the end user, because they wanted to get set up and run their business or build their website or start a blog. And on the other hand, I was leveraging retired teachers who were just awesome at teaching to get back into the workplace through the gig economy. So that's kind of the origin of GetSetUp. And it's obviously evolved so much that even I can't believe all the things they're doing. But that was the story.
So you start in February, and then this little thing called a pandemic hit. What were the pivots you made during early and then midway?
Yeah, I just believe this was a huge opportunity before the pandemic, just because of 1/3 of the world's population is aging. Didn't expect a pandemic. And I think
By the way, no one expected the pandemic.
Well, unless you were at one of those events in Stanford 3 years ago where they predicted it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Only they predicted it, no one else. But the pandemic actually was a big forcing function, because what happened is everyone had to go online. And we, for the first time, realized that this cohort of the community, which is people 60 plus, now needed to learn a lot of things online just to stay active, healthy, and engaged, or even just get basic things, right? Get their vaccines, connect with people online. And so the amount of things people had to now learn, which they were sort of delaying or avoiding, became a necessity. And for us, that meant there was more and more need for someone to teach that, because the way they wanted to learn was on video, one on one, asking questions. And we found that older adults learned better when they saw someone like them, when there was the right empathy, there was cadence. And so the pandemic just became a huge forcing function. We had, I think we had only 100 users in March last year. And now we have 2.7 million. So I can tell you that it definitely was a big forcing function. But people started coming to the platform to learn a lot of things, and we just couldn't keep up. We started recruiting more and more teachers. People from Career Pivot who came and joined. And then we went global because we realized older adults all over the world have the same need, the same problem, whether you're in India, Australia, UK, or China. And there was nobody helping them. They were just underserved markets. So we started launching or onboarding instructors to teach in every single language, every single country. And so that's kind of why we've expanded. I don't think we pivoted. I feel like the intent was always peer to peer on video. So it's still older adults or people in their 55s teaching others, their peers. It's in cohorts. So, if you're interested in tech, you sit in tech. If you're interested in fitness, you sit in fitness. I think what we ended up teaching just changed and expanded, which I think would have happened anyway, but it would have taken 10 years to get there. We just got there in 15 months.
And obviously, you expanded a lot more than just retired teachers.
Yeah.
Who's teaching for you now?
Yeah. So, one of the best things about building this community, it's starting to look like the community, because we found that our early learners came for learning, but they stayed back for socializing. They were meeting other people with similar interests. And so after, 4 to 5 classes on the platform, even our learners started saying, hey, I can teach that skill. I'm a retired doctor. I'm a nurse. I'm a, lawyer, or I was a carpenter. And this is the beauty of what I wanted to do, right? Like everybody has a talent. Everybody has a skill. If you've lived for 50 to 60 years, you just need to know that you can do it. And so what we saw happening is learners started to become creators, and they were raising their hands and becoming instructors on the platform. And so now we have a whole variety of, we call them guides. We people from the tech sector, from HR, finance. We have celebrities who've retired. We had Obama's photographer, Pete Souza, come on, and we had Rick Steves come on. So anyone who identifies themselves in this cohort feels like they have skills to give. We try to make it as easy as possible for them to come and share and engage with our community.
Originated with Career Pivot was Deb Livingston.
Yes.
Who she was kind of lost, and she suddenly got into the cooking stuff.
Oh, I know. It was
creating cooking classes. And I can tell you, it brought her alive.
That's amazing. I love watching Deb's classes. I actually, before our podcast, I was setting up some presentation, and it's just Deb in her kitchen, and she just looks, lively and just amazing. And I can tell you, she has a big fan following all over the world now. So.
In other words, she's a rock star now.
Yeah, they are all influencers. I think we're building the next generation of influencers on our platform. Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing that we discussed before we got on. I've got a number of people from my community who are teaching for you. And the biggest thing they've gotten out of it is they get so much positive feedback, and that just builds their self-esteem. Yeah. I mean, it's, if you dig deeper into
like what drives us to stay engaged and social and less lonely. It doesn't matter what age you are, right? Whether you're a kid, you're seeking validation on Instagram through likes. Whether when you're at a workplace, you're getting validation from your colleagues. So at every stage of our lives, we need validation. We can't survive without it. But when you age and I think you retire, it's hard because who's going to give you that? And that really leads to a decline in your social determinants of health. Is it impacts your physical health, your mental health, your relationships, and that's very important for longevity. So it's not just with people from your community. Like my mom worked for Siemens, which is a multinational German company, for most of her life, and she retired and was just getting lonely and depressed, and just didn't want to engage. And I think it took a lot to get her on to GetSetUp. And she, like Deb, runs her own cooking show in India now. She has like 500 people. But at the core of it, when I look at what my mom or what a lot of people on the platform were really looking for was validation. There's a group of learners who come because they need validation. There's a group that come because they need financial stability as they're aging, because that's their purpose of coming on. There's a group that comes just to make friends because they don't have that social circle. And then there's a group of people who come because access to this kind of services, we have like a couple of thousands of classes now. You can't get access to that, right? So 80% of our platform are women from, at least in the US, from minority communities, women of color. And you ask them, they didn't have access to going to a YMCA or to any other facility to do yoga with an Indian teacher or cooking with an Australian. So I think there are different reasons people come, but validation, because everyone on the platform gives you feedback, whether you're a learner or you're a teacher, they're all there to support each other because they kind of thrive out of that sentiment. So which is why it's becoming a bigger community, more meaningful version of Facebook than I thought.
Quick interruption. If you are enjoying this podcast, please rate it and review it on whatever podcast player you are using. And more importantly, would you mind telling a friend? Thanks, and back to the podcast episode. So you pay your guides. So what percentage of your guides, or how many guides do you have, and how many are part-time and how many are full-time?
We initially, my goal was to get as many guides paid as part-time, right? I was testing out this whole thesis about the gig economy, but gig economy around knowledge work. And we expanded to a couple of hundred sort of guides who were part-time. This is around the globe. And then we realized that as we were doing it, our business model is really different from what your traditional influencer or your B2C companies like Airbnb, right? It's a very healthcare focus. So what we needed to do was get more consistent guides. So someone like a Deb is full-time. So we have domain leads that are full-time now on the platform. You met Judy, who came as a guide, as a part-time guide, but now runs the entire guide community globally. So I think as we grow, there will be more guides that become full-time as we find expertise and know how to sort of monetize that. But we're open for part-time because there are guides who want to come and just do this twice a week. Some guides want to do it once a week. And so depending on your commitment level, we want to keep it flexible. And I believe, we have the guides, but then we have over 1,000 plus people who come and just host classes. They get paid on a one-off basis. A doctor would come on and do a class once a month. And so, they would get paid differently from a guide. But no, I think we're still 16 months in. I think as we grow and we build a larger audience, the number of guides on the platform will increase. The roles they play will increase. I that's still my mission. I want to create more jobs because I think that's the best way to solve for all health issues, and or the determinants of health is giving meaningful work where you can get employed. So
Yeah, I had Diana Wu David on the podcast who wrote the book Future Proof. And one of the things that she talks about is experimenting with your career. And Deb's a good example of someone who came out of, she worked for a company for years and years and years, did all kinds of different stuff. And she got to try out, she experimented with the cooking.
Yeah.
Which is totally unrelated to what she's done the rest of her career. But she was given the opportunity for that experimentation.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is cool.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it amazing like that you can again be a child in a way, going back to college where you can experiment with what you want to do next, right? You're not done when you turn 60. You get to start all over again and experiment with what you want to do. So I feel there's going to be, not just us, I feel there are going to be more and more companies that can create opportunities, because, the aspect of reskilling and going back into the existing workforce or the existing jobs, that's going to be hard. I mean, the age barrier is real, it's relevant, it's going to only get harder. Like 40 is going to be the next age at which they start cutting off, but I feel that gives you the opportunity to discover what next, right? And hopefully, I think as more and more folks like Deb, my mom, like Wade, get exposure to the world and understand there is an audience for something that they were passionate about versus something that they were skilled about, I think they will feel the encouragement to pivot, basically change their careers.
Yeah, another good example was Russ Eanes, who's now running a lot of your travel stuff. And by the way, he used to be the executive director for Menno Media. He was, which is the publishing arm of the Mennonite Church. So doing travel classes is something quite different than what he had done previously. And, so right now, most of your, I think all your classes are free. So what's the plans? How are you going to make money?
Oh, I think it's free to the end user, and I think it will most likely always be free to the end user. But if you think of Facebook, right, the platform is free, but they make money through ads. We don't make money through ads. We make money because for our audience, organizations that they either live in or they get their health insurance from or they go back to work, care about them being active, engaged, and healthy. And so we get paid from businesses so that it can stay free for the end user. So what a lot of people don't know, that we have, I think, a couple of hundred partners all over the world. Like, we have the state of Michigan that makes GetSetUp accessible to their entire 2 million older adults. So they pay us for every class. So when a Michigander comes to GetSetUp, they enter through a different door than most other people who come to GetSetUp. And they have different set of classes that are curated for Michiganders. They have some exclusive classes. And so we believe we grow like a B2C company and want to try to keep it free as long as we can. I think at some point we'll have to charge something. But businesses, health and human services, health insurance companies, senior living, they all want to reduce the cost of care over time. And that's the beauty of this age group or this cohort, right? I mean, I wish going to high school or going to university had a business model where like all you had to do was go and study and someone else paid for it because they wanted you to come and like produce or be an asset. I think, unfortunately, it's not the case, but with anyone in their 60s or 65, there is direct correlation of learning and staying active with improving social determinants of health. And we have enough data to show that it's improving, right? People who come to GetSetUp feel less lonely over a period of time. People who come to GetSetUp become more active because they're doing certain types of classes together. And that information in itself helps businesses to pay us for those users.
So where do you see GetSetUp in, say, 18 months?
Oh, I actually know where it will be, but I can't share that publicly. No, it's I look. My vision is to build the coolest place for people like my friends and my parents to hang out, right, and live their best life. And I believe that learning is the hook through which they all come in, but then they find out their career, their next gig, whether it's just their passion or hobby, and then they stay active and engaged as they live their best life. So my vision is to build sort of a global platform. We are going to launch in UK and Singapore pretty soon. We are already in Australia, and really be that platform that connects people from different walks of life, from different parts of the world. Yeah, be known for actually doing something about aging rather than talking a lot about like what to do with this cohort, right? I feel like we are action oriented organization, so I want probably to get to millions of creators on the platform or guides who are teaching, or maybe they are doing different roles, and get to about 20 million users by end of next year.
Very cool. I mean, you started out just being on Zoom.
Yes.
And now you have GetSetUp TV.
Oh, we actually on Tuesday are launching our own platform. It's built on Zoom, and it is actually the lounge, the GetSetUp Lounge. So it's really really cool. There's a sneak peek. I can send it to you, but what we've done is we've allowed learners to come in and hang out and socialize before class, right? Which you can't do on Zoom. So you can actually come in, you can find people from your area, you can chat with them, hang out. Literally, it's the lobby before you, or the lounge. And then when the class starts, you can interact. And then when the class ends, you can again hang out. So we've basically taken this very transactional nature of Zoom, which is a meeting, and made it into a very fluid place where you can just experience and connect with people and socialize. And so it's going live in the US on Tuesday. It's the first platform actually designed for socializing over video, because everybody has been building a meeting tool, and we've built the first sort of social network on Zoom. So we're very excited about its launch in the US. It's done pretty well in Australia, and it'll be the first platform of its kind where it's a video first social network.
Yeah, by the way, we're recording this Saturday, September 18th. So this thing will get launched on the 21st, and this will publish a couple of weeks later. So by time this airs, it should be live.
It should be live. Yeah.
Do you record your classes?
Not all of our classes. Certain classes, the learners, actually our learners somehow ask a lot of recordings because they want to watch it again. Yeah. We didn't expect that would happen, but it's one of the top use cases. So we do record our classes and replay only some of them when it's usually a guest speaker or it's some celebrity that people couldn't attend and there was a lot of demand. But our regular classes, we don't replay them. We just usually, everything is run live. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's I think is kind of unique is the live feature, and the fact that you there's someone there you can ask questions to.
Yeah, that's the most important thing for us, because we know that, I mean, I've come from education, so I know that 95% of the world doesn't learn by doing things themselves. Like self-serve is only for like 5%. The rest of them actually need to ask questions from their peers or from their instructors. And so really GetSetUp from day one was built for interactivity.
So this is great. If someone wanted to obviously get on GetSetUp, or if they wanted to explore being a guide, how might they do that?
Well, it's easy. Go to getsetup.org or getsetup.io. They both will take you to the same place. You can actually in the top right corner see apply to host a session. So that's where you can apply to get a taste of what it means to be a guide. So I always encourage people to come and host their first session. We'll make sure people are there. You'll get the feedback. You'll realize if you like this or not. And that's a stepping stone to then actually becoming a guide on the platform. But if you just want to come and take classes and see what it is, or come and take Deb's class and see what it means to be a guide, just come to Get Set Up and search for Deb or Russ or Vicky. And they have classes running almost every day, so yeah, just come to getsetup.org.
And if someone wanted to reach out and contact you, how might they do that?
Yes, you can either contact me on LinkedIn. I do check that, or through email. So it's my first name, Neil, dot my last name, Dsouza, Dsouza, at getsetup.io. So you can send me an email to that.
And we will put links to all that in the show notes. So, Neil, thank you. I've been looking forward to finally meeting you because everyone talks about you. And thank you very much for being on the Repurpose Your Career podcast.
No, and thank you for having bringing me on, and also just being such a great source of guides for our platform. I think Career Pivot single-handedly has contributed more instructors to us and helped us scale. So I really am very grateful for what you're doing, Mark, and helping people pivot. And hopefully more and more folks realize that when you have to pivot, you can actually pivot 180 degrees to something else and not towards what you were doing before.
Well, thank you, Neil.
Yes. Thanks, Mark.
Neil is a real cool guy, and I'm really excited about the direction that GetSetUp is headed. Check out the website, courses, and other resources available. Take a moment, go to careerpivot.com, sign up for the weekly Career Pivot Insights newsletter, which is sent out every Sunday. You will get a weekly update on this podcast, white papers, and new blog posts. While there, do not forget to check out the Career Pivot community, which can be found at careerpivot.com/community. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look for Career Pivot on Facebook and LinkedIn. You'll also find me on Twitter at Career Pivot. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. You will find all the show notes at careerpivot.com/episode-242. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podbeam, Overcast, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and lots of other places where podcasts can be found. In fact, I have just started publishing the podcast on YouTube. So I hope to see you next Monday for another episode of Repurpose Your Career podcast.